But with regard to the births in this country now, something like 30% of them have actually been to foreign-born mothers. Now that has increased from something like 20%. And that's in the space of 20 years. So, frankly, immigration has contributed quite a lot already, largely through indirect growth in our population.
So it's those second generation, potentially third generation migrants that seem to be having a disproportionate effect on population growth.
I don't know, is the honest answer, and I'm not sure that any of us can be confident in saying that this is the precise answer. But with regard to immigration, I very much doubt that it has fallen. It has continued to increase, and I suspect that we will soon be back to the sort of levels pre-pandemic of around 300,000 a year net. That is going to increase our population anyway. We don't need to worry. Well, we do need to worry about the fact that it's so large, but I don't think we're going to need to worry about our birth rate not providing for the numbers in the future.
Do you agree with that, Sam?
No. I think it's an interesting... Yeah, well, it's an interesting point you make that the population will continue to grow. But I think there's a fundamental sort of mismatch here, because obviously one problem is you have this aging population, you have an increasing dependency ratio, you have someone's going to have to pay for the pensions, for social care, for the NHS. And we've seen in the last few months how taxes are sort of slowly rising on younger people at a time when they're struggling to start families.
And older people are becoming a larger group, and also an increasingly older group and a more expensive group to take care of as medicine improves and all the other wonderful advances that are no doubt good, but are also expensive.
This is exactly right. And the idea that we sort of we get out of this by we turn the immigration tap again, it kind of goes up. That's fine purely on fiscal terms, perhaps. But it's sort of, again, missing the point that people are not being able to live the sort of lives they want to live, which is, I think, a much greater policy failing.
And, I mean, there seems to be...
Tom, I'm not sure where Sam disagrees with me on. I didn't disagree with anything of that. All I'm saying is that immigration is not the answer. And the fact is that we're about to, if we haven't already, revert to massive scales of immigration, which I don't think this country needs, and I think is detrimental to the interests of this country.
I think, interestingly, it seems to be there's a bit of a consensus that this is ultimately a cost of living issue. This is, to some extent, people not feeling like they can go ahead with the lives that they want to live, which is a great concern for welfare in this country. And I wonder, there's a bit of a meme, if you will, when it comes to the kinds of people that are unlikely to have children, and it's those who tend to be more educated, potentially waiting later and later in life to have children. There's a movie that came out about a decade ago called Idiocracy, which takes this to a farcical degree. But is that a concern? That really there are whole sections of society now that don't feel like they should, whether it's for financial or ecological even reasons?
So this is a really interesting point you raise, because, as you say, there are people who say they don't want to have children because of what they term the climate emergency. Something I think that's kind of underlying a lot of this, though, is, as you say, there are ideas in circulation which people sort of imbibe about the standard of living one must have, or the sort of the effect on the planet their children might have, which are extremely anti-natalist. And if you take this to a sort of ridiculous degree, where you have a really quite intolerable working culture, you end up with something like the situation in South Korea, where I believe the birth rate now is down to 0.9 children per woman. So this is a country in demographic collapse.
And well, talking about the demography of the UK in a wider setting, we've had the settlement scheme numbers out today as well. And Alp, I want to turn this to you. We have more people living in this country than we thought we did.
Yes. We have got a lot more people here than the government has been telling us we have. The EU settlement scheme, we were told when the scheme was about to start to expect something like 3.7 million people, EU nationals in this country. It turns out to be 5.5, 6 million. This does make me wonder whether the government actually knows what is really going on. And if it doesn't know what is going on, how can it possibly plan for what is needed by all of us. Now, I think that getting it wrong on immigration is fundamentally a flaw of the government's planning process as well, which is going to lead to all sorts of pressures and problems in the future.
Although there'll be many people who think that the government shouldn't really be trying to plan that much of our economy, that the best way to deliver the services for people and businesses is through a more market-led approach.
It should at least know what is going on, and that's what I'm pointing to, the fact that the government doesn't appear to know what is going on. It doesn't appear to know the people that are in this country. There is no control, clearly. And that
we are running very short on the end of the programme, but last word to you, Sam. What's your takeaway from this conversation?
I mean, there's so many conversations about British productivity and welfare do come back to. You know, the simplest fix here would be to reduce some of the planning in the economy by liberalising the housing system, because the biggest cost for young people and the most easily addressed cost is that rents are sky high, house prices are sky high, and people can't get the stability and the income to start a family.
Well, a great way to conclude. That's a point of consensus, I believe. Well, Sam Ashworth-Hayes and Alp Mehmet, thank you very much for joining me on The Briefing this afternoon.